take it off.
Okay.
All right. Everyone, thank you for joining. Again, my name is Chris Turner, host of the Up and Under podcast. I have here a distinguished guest with us, Greg Jones, aka Doc, the head coach of Kutztown University rugby team. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm doing fine. Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's completely our pleasure. And I know we had talked about it briefly before the podcast, but it's quite the catch that you have there on the wall behind you. Is that Alaskan fish you had mentioned?
It's salmon from one of my fishing expeditions. That's my other pastime besides rugby. Yes, sir.
So that's just the two main things. And I know you have a chiropractic background, but it's mainly fishing and rugby, and that's all Doc Jones really is.
Oh no, I'm also a champion trap shooter.
Oh,
That's
okay.
kind of, that's kind of a joke between I and the other coaches in the conference. They always ask me how the fishing and the trap shooting's going, rather than the rugby. But no, those are my three passions at the moment.
Well, I'm sure you have many secrets stashed away that you don't like to give to the other coaches, but hopefully we don't divulge those secrets on the podcast today. But well, who knows? Who knows?
All right.
So Doc, do you mind if I call you Doc?
No, everyone does. Thank you.
Great. So I did a little bit of research about you, and you've been coaching Kutztown, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this information, since 1986 to current day, which is around 33, 34 years.
That's correct, yes.
That is an absolute wonderful resume that you have. Can you kind of divulge a little bit of how you got started at the university and how you've seen the progression to today?
Oh, yeah. Well, 1986, I just recently retired from my playing days, and I was in a restaurant here in Kutztown, and one of the young men who was the captain of the rugby team approached me and asked if I would like to coach. And of course, I said no. And then I said, well, I'll come out to one practice, see if I can help you guys out. And I haven't missed a day since. And as far as the progression, obviously, it's been a huge journey. It's been a fascinating journey to go from a club sport where no one wanted to have you on campus or knew what rugby was to the point we are now where we're a varsity club sport and get tremendous support from the university. So it's been a real journey. It's been a real experience. I think we could write a book, but it's been a lot of fun for sure. And hopefully I have several years left.
No, we hope you do too, because I know we've never personally met until this video that we're having right now, but your name has resonated throughout, at least for the past decade that I've been within the game and playing. Even when I was in high school, you've always heard about Kutztown and A, where is it? B, how are they that good? And C, who the hell is Doc Jones? And it was one of those things where it wasn't more or less a knock on the school. It was almost a diamond in the rough, so to speak.
Right.
And for what you've done for the sport over there has been phenomenal. And I'm sure a lot of the players you have coached could also thank you for that. But it seems you've also coached a lot of all-star teams in the region as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Back in the day when we had 15s was played in the spring when we used to have the select sides. And now, of course, sevens is taken over for that. But Eastern Pennsylvania Rugby Union, we had a select side when the unions were divided into sub-unions. And of course, we did that for several years. And then we advanced to the Mid-Atlantic Rugby Union, which was, our region. And I coached the ERU at one time. Actually, I was the last coach to coach a ERU, Eastern Rugby Union event. In the select side championships, we lost in triple overtime to the Pacific Coast and Jack Clark back in the long time ago in the early mid-90s. But I had once had the privilege of playing for the ERU for several years when I was younger. So that was quite an honor for me to be the last collegiate coach to represent the ERU. Yes. And I'm also affiliated with my daughter, and I have started a high school team here 3 or 4 years ago. So now we have a high school team in Kutztown as well.
Wonderful. And no, that's great. That's great to keep it in the family. Is that the Silverbacks team?
Yes, it is. Yep. And
great.
First 2 years we had a team, it was kind of phenomenal because we only had about 23 kids and we made it to the state finals 2 years in a row, or semifinals, sorry, 2 years in a row. So that's been exciting. I'm their technical director. My daughter's director of rugby, so to speak. They call her Mama Lap. And we have a coach, and it's a whole family thing. My grandson played, and so it's great. It's what we do.
That's wonderful to hear of, having that passed down throughout the family, which that's a goal for all of us to really have in the future. But it's really cool to see you and your family take a part of that.
Yeah.
I have in my research, and this is kind of hard to believe, but also believable, that you've never experienced a losing season at your tenure at Kutztown, and you have over 800 victories. Is that correct?
That's correct. When you combine
Wow.
the sevens and the 15s, what you read there is a little bit behind the times, but yeah, we have more than that now. But I don't really care to mention how many wins we have. That's not important to me. But yes, we've never had a losing season. I think the most losses we've ever had, one season in 15s, we had 3 losses in a regular conference games. But then again, back in the day before sevens, we would always have those playoffs. We used to have 15s tournaments. So sometimes we'd play 20, 25 games a year between fall and spring. So the numbers accumulated a little bit quicker. But then when sevens came along, our sevens program is about not in 10 years old, and we play 50 games per spring in our sevens program. So
Wow.
been very successful with that. So the numbers accumulated. So it kind of makes it look a little bit more pretentious than it really is.
But
But
that's still an amazing resume to have. And if there is a college rugby Hall of Fame, I'm sure you'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my personal opinion.
well, that's very nice of you to say, but I don't know if there is, or that might come another day. But right now, we're just concerned about winning the Rugby East.
Right, right. And well, we will be getting into this season's competition very shortly, but I had one follow-up question to what I heard previously was that, yes, you have over 800 victories, I'm sure a lot more, and those accumulate over 15s and sevens. And you had mentioned that victory is not the end all be all. And if you can describe, what is that for you and your club?
Well, the most important thing to myself and the club and what we've built here at Kutztown over the last 33 years, and I do not mean this as a cliche, I mean this wholeheartedly, it's all about culture. And you hear people talk about that a lot, but we live it here. I live it. Um, our culture is based on trust and honesty and accountability and clarity of purpose, and we live it. We don't just preach it or talk it. One of the things that's really nice about our university is after being here so many years and having the kids buy into the culture, the university trusts us. They trust me. They trust what we're promoting, what we're trying to teach.
Right.
And we're here to promote and graduate young men that are going to be successful in life. And then the victories on the rugby field are the icing on the cake. That's the byproduct of the culture. And that's how we approach it. I approach it.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
So we're very excited about it. We're very excited about Saturday with our final game of St. Bonaventure. Hopefully we can win and finish the Rugby East season unblemished. And then we'll go out to Notre Dame University for our last game. And then we'll start preparing for sevens, which we've already started to do, as I've done as far as scheduling, etc. So
Right.
And we like that. We really like that switch to, flip that switch between 15s and all the things that we do and employ in that part of the game. And then when we flip the switch and go to sevens, and everybody in our rugby club, 52 members, all play sevens. So we field 3, 4, 7 sides every weekend. And it's designed on improving their skills. Plus, we just can't afford to play in the playoffs in the spring, in the 15s. We just can't afford that travel. So that's what we do, and that's what we really enjoy. So we're looking forward to Saturday and then beyond in sevens.
Right. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And for a lot of those who aren't aware of it, a lot of conferences play in the fall and play in the spring, or only choose one or the other. And a lot of that is loosely determined on if you do get to go to the championship. Now, a lot of clubs like yourself, unfortunately, like you had mentioned, can't afford it. Um, And even with such a successful program like Kutztown has had presently and in the past, what are some factors that you've attempted to try and gain through fundraising or recruiting or just creating a grander net to cast and light and bring in awareness to these kind of situations? Is there anything in specific that you really attempted personally or as a club?
Well, personally, we've gone the extra yard as far as recruiting, and we started that about 10 or 12 years ago. I looked around and I thought, people in our area, our region, they're not recruiting. So we started to recruit. And then one thing led to another, and we had an assistant coach, then got a job in admissions. And then I worked specifically within our international admissions. And we've gotten to the point now where, the fact that the president of the university a few years ago elevated us to this club varsity status, we're in the admissions offices all the time, and we're on the phone. We've got a nice recruiting budget. We can get on airplane, fly all over the country now. And that's really the biggest factor where we put a lot of our time into recruiting and bring kids in. Right now we have, we're a very small school, and about 7,500 students at the moment, maybe 8,000 in a community of 4,000. We have 19 different states represented in our roster, plus 5 different countries. Wow. So the recruiting is also, the university appreciates it, to bring in out-of-state kids and kids from other countries, and the diverse culture that we create on campus. So that's been a huge factor in our success in the last 10 years.
Right. Do you believe in and I have to ask, just as on a personal question for myself, but do you believe that putting Kutztown even more on the map and getting more recognition through a playoff structure or attending the championship series, do you think that would really help you, or is it more of like a secondary pursuit for the club?
It's a secondary pursuit. There's 2 reasons, Chris. Number one is the monetary reason, but number 2 is there's this huge elephant in the room that people don't like to talk about right now, and it's on the tip of the spear, is the seasonality issue. We live in a climate where, we can't play any rugby outside until end of March because of snow and weather and ice. And so our sevens program, it's affordable for us to jump into vans rather than buses, which costs $2,000 to go 3 hours, where we get 4 or 5 vans for $100 a piece. And then we go south, go to the Carolinas and et cetera, and we can play in that month in February, or we'll get on an airplane and fly to Vegas. This year, we're hoping to go to Los Angeles. So we get out of the area, which we can't do in 15, because number one, we can't afford to put everybody on an airplane. Number 2, it's a seasonality issue. So, and I've been involved in in Eastern rugby in the United States for all these years as a player and a coach. And to me, seasonality is a huge issue that isn't being addressed. And that's another factor why we play sevens, that we have that option now. Yes.
Great. No, that makes complete sense. And thank you for clarifying that. And I know a lot of our listeners may be privy to that information, but a lot may not know. And you're right, it is a huge deal when it comes, like if a team from California who doesn't see snow or even barely any rain could play all year long, essentially, while teams in Pennsylvania, Tennessee, New York, all scattered out the Midwest and the East Coast don't have that luxury. And you're right, it is a problem when you have successful and potentially powerful teams like yourself that cannot showcase themselves on a national level. And hopefully this brings some of that to light, and that could start conversations for the future. But completely understand the boat you're in, though. Well,
I think we do come to a point in sevens where we showcase ourselves, and we've been in, and in the sevens we've been very, very successful, CRC, national sevens, etc. So I think that's showcasing, and I think the kids that I talk to that we recruit, I'm amazed at how many of them are more interested in sevens than 15s. Not that I am, but they are. And it's become that popular, and we know why, right? The Olympics, etc. So right. I think you can showcase your club just as much, if not more, in this era of rugby in sevens than in 15s. So I think it promotes our program even better.
Right, right. And I agree with that. And it's honestly just taking your strengths and running with it, right? And not really having excuses. It's just this is the way it is, and this is how we're going to deal with it, which is wonderful breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I personally feel that most excuses are lies.
That's a good take, Coach. That's a good take. Um, just a little bit more about the 17s versus 15s, and I know it's a completely different styles of game and different styles of player for the game, but how have you seen the style of sevens really progress in the United States throughout your tenure of coaching? Because you're right, it has this new emergence within the Olympic Committee, and a lot of people are now getting into just sevens and then trickling down into 15s, at least from my perspective. Do you have any insight or what you've been seeing and how the game's progressed? And do you think it's better or worse for the sport, or maybe even a neutral point of view?
I don't think it's neither worse or better. I think it promotes the sport on a much greater scale because more people can participate. But as far as the style is concerned, when we first started getting involved in sevens in 2009 or so, it was just all catch as catch can. And now, because of the growth of the sport, and us included, all the systems that we use and try to maintain. And for example, you could, you come out to halftime at the CRC in the finals against Cal a few years ago, and you'll hear me say, just stick to the system. Just stick to the system. There is no catch as catch can. Now, obviously there is, but only after the system has evolved to the point where that's going to be appropriate. So I think the game has changed a great way that way. And then all of the people watching Mike Friday and his teams and seeing systems, and then we get to view the world class teams in the World Series and the travel, and you see the systems. The game has progressed tremendously that way, and everyone is now, instead of catch as catch can, everyone has a specific job on the seven side, and I think that's a huge difference and a huge credit to Mike Friday and his coaching staff that he's employed that and become so successful with. And I've had several players that have been involved in that program, so they bring all of that knowledge back. So that's been a huge asset.
That is massive, right? Because not only do you coach these certain individuals to get, and they have the prowess or the skills to get to that level, but do they? And you said they come back to the university and help reteach that into the culture and into the program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Demonte Noble's been with the Falcons and just won a bronze medal. He's a senior. So he's in my office every other day. It's been a huge asset, and we talk a lot about what he does at the Olympic Training Center.
Wonderful, wonderful, and it's great to have those players injected into that atmosphere at an earlier age as well, while still in school, and bringing that back to the club, which is massive, I'm sure, for you. Yeah. I know we have a few more minutes here, Coach, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I'm sure you got to get right back to the field and help your team for this upcoming match. But I just had a few off the cuff, funny rugby questions for you, and kind of relate to your past and potentially present. So, as a former player at Palmer College, correct?
Correct.
Practice school. Were you more of a socks up, socks down type of a guy, or no socks at all? Because there's been seen to this trend that a lot of players don't like to wear socks during games.
I can answer all these questions in one sentence. I was a United States Marine. My socks were always up.
There it is. Just the military attitude is just still alive and well. I love it. I love it. If you could change one rule about the game, what would you change?
The game of rugby?
Yes.
I would probably employ more substitution in the 15s game. Yes.
Okay. If you could take off one position of the field, what would you take off and why? Of 15s.
That's a tough question. I never thought about that. Well, I guess the only person we could probably take off and not miss the most would be weak side wing. Let the fullback cover. But that's my only reason. That's a crazy question.
Right? Yeah.
There's no answer.
And I'm sure a lot of people out there, especially North America, maybe aren't privy to 10s rugby. And I know a lot of Southern Hemisphere and Northern English and Welsh teams like that are, but it's really interesting to see when you have 10 on the field and how you use those, because usually it's 5-on-5, 5 forwards, 5 backs, correct?
Right.
And it's just really interesting to see. But
we have a new game coming on board, right? With 5 people on side. What they
5?
call it? Yeah, instead of 7.
Oh, I did hear a little bit about that. It's like this new league that,
Rugby
yeah,
something. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it.
yeah, maybe I could do a little bit more research and have those guys on in the future and see what their plan is. But anyway, before we end this, I'd like to say thank you so much, Coach, for coming on, talking the sport of rugby, talking Kutztown. And if you have anyone for the next minute or so to give a shout out to, the floor is yours to do so.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'd like to give a shout out to all my associate coaches in the Rugby East Conference who all worked so hard to promote the conference and make it the best conference that we can possibly make it. And I think right now it's one of the most competitive, so we're just continuously trying to add to it and promote it and make it even better. So those are my buddies. Those are the ones I'm cheering for.
Wonderful, wonderful. And when it comes to the club, I will be sure to plug in all the website and the social media accounts in order to get in touch with you if there's any viewers or listeners out there that are interested in learning more about Kutztown or even joining the team. So I'll be sure to plug that in here at the bottom. And again, Coach, thank you so much for your time. I know you got to get back to the swing of things, but good luck this upcoming weekend against St. Bonaventure, and good luck in closing out the East.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a real joy to talk to you. Appreciate it. All right, bye-bye.
Wonderful. Thank you, Coach. All right.